Playboy Billionaire used her then discarded her. She returned as his father's choice, his new stepmother. The study door closed with a soft click. Tate cornered her between the Rembrandt and the mahogany bookshelf, desperation making his voice crack. "Aurelia, we need to talk. About us. About 3 years ago." She turned from the painting, amber eyes cool as winter. "There is no us, Tate. There never was. You made that very clear. I was wrong. What I said, how I ended things, I was an idiot and I'm sorry and You were honest." Her voice cut through his rambling like a scalpel. "Maybe not kind, but honest. You told me I was temporary. That we were too different. You were right. Aurelia, please. I love your father." The words hit him like a physical blow. He actually stumbled backward. "Not the way I thought I loved you," she continued, each word carefully chosen, devastatingly precise. "This is real. Built on respect and understanding and genuine partnership. Donovan sees me as an equal. He values my mind, my work, my opinions." She paused, letting the question hang between them like a blade. "Can you say you ever did? Have you ever thrown away something precious, only to watch someone else treasure it? Have you ever used someone you claimed to care about, discarded them like garbage, then watched them become everything you were too blind to see they could be? For your own father?" Thaddeus Crowe, Playboy Billionaire heir, had bedded models across 3 continents. He'd used women like tissues and thrown them away just as easily. But 3 years ago, he met Aurelia Hayes. An art restorer from Brooklyn who wore simple dresses and saw beauty in damaged things. For 3 months, she made him feel like maybe he could be better than he was. Then his father told him to end it. And Tate, coward that he was, obeyed. Cruelly. Completely. Burned it to ashes and walked away. Now she's back. Wearing his father's ring. Living in his childhood home. About to become his stepmother. And there's not a damn thing he can do about it except watch the woman he destroyed build a life with the man who actually deserves her. If you've ever made a choice you can never take back, this story will haunt you. If you think karma isn't real, wait until you see what happens to a man who uses and discards a woman who deserved the world. Hit that like button if you believe in consequences. Subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories for tales about people getting exactly what they deserve. And comment below, do people who treat others like garbage deserve a second chance? Because Tate Crowe is about to find out that some doors, once closed, stay closed forever. Stay with me. Because this revenge is served ice cold, and it's absolutely deserved. Now let me take you back to where it all started. Back to the night everything shattered. The Plaza Hotel Grand Ballroom glittered like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over Manhattan's elite as they celebrated Donovan Crowe's 60th birthday. Champagne flowed from fountains. An orchestra played something classical that Tate didn't recognize and didn't care about. He stood beside one of those fountains in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, scanning the room for tonight's conquest. A model, maybe. Or that actress who'd been making eyes at him during cocktail hour. Another night, another obligation fulfilled, another woman to forget by morning. His father's voice cut through the noise, amplified by microphone. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with me tonight." Tate tuned it out. He'd heard enough of his father's speeches to last a lifetime. Another thank you to the board, another mention of Crowe Industries' success, another. "I'd like you to meet my fiancée." That got Tate's attention. His father was getting married? To whom? The old man hadn't dated anyone seriously since divorcing Tate's mother 15 years ago. The crowd parted. A woman stepped into the spotlight beside Donovan Crowe. Time stopped. Crimson silk clung to curves Tate remembered tracing in darkness. Dark hair swept up to reveal a neck he'd once marked with kisses and careless cruelty. She wore diamonds at her throat, elegance like armor, confidence like a crown. And when those amber eyes swept across the room and landed on him for one brief, devastating second, they held nothing. No recognition of pain caused. No acknowledgement of history shared. Just cool, polite indifference. Like he was no one. Like he'd never mattered at all. Aurelia Hayes. The champagne flute slipped from Tate's fingers. Crystal shattered against marble, the sound lost beneath the roar of blood in his ears and the applause erupting around the ballroom. His father's hand rested possessively at the small of her back. The same back Tate had pressed against hotel windows, penthouse walls, the leather seats of his Bentley. The same woman he'd used for 3 months then discarded like she was nothing. She was marrying his father. She was going to be his stepmother. The room tilted. Tate gripped the fountain's edge, expensive champagne soaking into his custom shoes from the shattered glass, but he couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what he was seeing. Donovan spoke into the microphone, pride evident in every word. Aurelia has been consulting on my private collection for the past year. Her expertise in art restoration is extraordinary. I'm honored that she's agreed to become my wife. A year. She'd been in his father's life for an entire year, and Tate had known nothing. The applause continued. His father kissed her. She smiled up at Donovan with what looked like genuine affection, genuine happiness, and Tate watched his past collide with his present in the most catastrophic way possible. Someone touched his arm. "Tate, you're bleeding." He looked down. He'd gripped the crystal stem so hard before dropping it that it had cut his palm. Blood welled up, dripping onto white marble. "Excuse me," he managed, his voice coming from somewhere far away. He pushed through the crowd, heading for anywhere that wasn't here, wasn't watching his father claim the woman Tate had thrown away. "Tate!" His father's voice, commanding as always. "Come here, son." There was no escape. The crowd was watching now, sensing drama, sensing scandal. Tate straightened his spine, wrapped his bleeding hand in his pocket square, and walked toward his execution. Up close, it was worse. He could see the details he'd missed in his shock. The emerald engagement ring, easily 10 carats. The way she stood beside his father with comfortable ease. The fact that she was even more beautiful than he remembered, polished and poised in ways she hadn't been 3 years ago. "You've met Aurelia before, haven't you?" His father's voice held amusement. Donovan Crowe knew everything. Of course he knew. "We've met." Aurelia's voice was pleasant, professional, utterly empty of emotion. Like Tate was a business associate she'd encountered once at a conference. "At the museum gala, I believe." 3 years ago, Tate managed, his voice hoarse. "Congratulations. On the engagement." "Thank you." She met his eyes fully for the first time, and there was nothing there. No anger, no hurt, no remnant of what they'd been. Just polite indifference. "Your father is a remarkable man. I'm very fortunate. We both are." Donovan pulled her closer, and Tate watched her lean into his father's embrace like it was the most natural thing in the world. "The wedding is in 3 months. June. You'll be my best man, Thaddeus." "Naturally." The knife twisted in his gut. "Naturally. If you'll excuse us." Aurelia touched his father's arm with casual intimacy that made Tate's stomach turn. "The mayor wanted to speak with you." She walked away on Donovan's arm without a backward glance. Without any acknowledgement that Tate's entire world had just imploded. Because to her, he was already gone. Already forgotten. Already less than nothing. Tate made it to his Bentley before his hands started shaking. The next morning, Tate woke up in his penthouse with a pounding headache and a text from his father. "Family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Don't be late." He almost didn't go. Almost texted some excuse about work or travel or literally anything else. But Donovan Crowe's invitations were really commands, and Tate had spent 30 years learning not to disobey. The Fifth Avenue townhouse looked exactly as it had when Tate grew up here. For stories of old money elegance, the kind of place where the furniture had pedigrees and the art on the walls was worth more than most people's houses. Except now there were fresh flowers on the hall table. Peonies, expensive and delicate. His father had never bought flowers before. Master Thaddeus Henderson, the butler who'd been with the family for 40 years, took his coat. "Your father and Miss Hayes are in the library." Miss Hayes. Not Miss Aurelia. Not the future Mrs. Crow. The formality felt like another knife. The library smelled of old leather and older money. His father stood by the fireplace, scotch in hand, looking every inch the self-made billionaire who'd built Crow Industries from nothing. And there she was, curled up on the leather sofa like she belonged there, examining what looked like an auction catalog. She wore jeans. Simple, dark-wash jeans and a cream cashmere sweater. Her hair was down, falling over one shoulder. She looked comfortable. At home. In his home. Tate. His father's voice was neutral. Punctual. That's new. Traffic was light. Tate accepted the scotch Henderson offered, needing something to do with his hands. Aurelia looked up from her catalog, smiled politely. "Hello, Tate. How are you?" Like they were acquaintances. Like his hands hadn't mapped every inch of her skin. Like she hadn't whispered his name in darkness. "Fine. And you?" "Wonderful." She returned to her catalog. "Your father acquired a Caravaggio at auction last week. We're deciding where to hang it." "The restoration room," Donovan said. "Better light. What do you think?" "Perfect." She made a note. "We'll need to adjust the humidity controls." They continued discussing art and light and technical details that went over Tate's head. He sipped his scotch and watched them interact with the easy comfort of two people who'd spent significant time together. Who understood each other. Who were building something. Everything he'd never been willing to build with her. Dinner was worse. They sat at the formal dining table, the same table where Tate had eaten thousands of meals growing up. But now Aurelia sat in his mother's old seat, and his father looked at her with something Tate had never seen on Donovan's face before. Happiness. Real, uncomplicated happiness. "The wedding planner wants to know about the guest list," Aurelia said over the main course. "I was thinking we should keep it relatively intimate." 300. Donovan nodded. "Sounds perfect. The ceremony at St. Patrick's Cathedral, reception here. Unless you prefer the plaza. Here is better. More personal." They planned their wedding like it was a business merger. Efficient, organized, no drama. Tate pushed food around his plate and said nothing. "You're quiet, son." His father's eyes were sharp. "Something on your mind?" "Just tired. Work has been busy." "Work." Donovan's tone made it clear what he thought of Tate's contributions to the family business. Which was to say, not much. "When are you planning to actually contribute something meaningful to the board?" The familiar criticism rolled over Tate. He'd heard it his whole life. Never good enough. Never serious enough. Never living up to the Crow name. "I'm working on several projects." "I'm sure you are." His father turned back to Aurelia. "The foundation gala is next month. You'll need a gown. I have several options already." She smiled at Donovan with genuine warmth. "Though I'd love your opinion before I decide." "You'd look beautiful in anything." Tate excused himself before dessert, claiming an early meeting. Neither of them tried very hard to make him stay. The next 3 months were exquisite torture. Wedding planning consumed the Crow household. Tate couldn't escape it. Every time he visited his father's office, there were fabric samples on the desk. Seating charts. Menu options. The merger of Donovan Crowe and Aurelia Hayes, planned with military precision. She moved into the townhouse 6 weeks before the wedding. Tate showed up for dinner one night and found her things everywhere. Books on art restoration on the library shelves. Her laptop on the desk in his father's study. Her coat hanging in the hallway closet. She was erasing his mother's ghost and replacing it with her own presence. And his father was letting her. Encouraging her. Looking at her like she'd hung the moon. At a business dinner 2 weeks before the wedding, Tate watched Aurelia charm his father's board members. She discussed market trends and investment strategies with the fluency of someone who'd been studying. She made the old men laugh. She made them respect her. "She's quite something," Richard Morrison, the CFO, said to Tate. "Your father is a lucky man." Tate forced a smile. "Very lucky. I heard you two knew each other before." Morrison's eyes were calculating. "Before she and your father. We met briefly." Tate kept his voice casual. "At a museum event. Years ago." "Ah." Morrison didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. The past was rising up to meet Tate at every turn, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He tried, once, to talk to her alone. It was 10 days before the wedding. Tate showed up at the townhouse unannounced, knowing his father had a late board meeting. Henderson let him in, and Tate found Aurelia in his father's study, working at the laptop. She looked up when he entered, mild surprise crossing her face. "Tate. I didn't know you were coming by. Dad's not here." "I know. I wanted to talk to you." Something shifted in her expression. Wariness. She closed her laptop. "About what?" "About us. About 3 years ago." She stood, putting the desk between them like a barrier. "There is no us, Tate. There never was. You made that very clear." The words from 3 years ago, thrown back at him. He deserved them. "I was wrong." The admission tasted like ashes. "What I said, how I ended things, I was cruel and I'm sorry, Anne. You were honest." She cut him off, voice calm and measured. "Maybe not kind, but honest. You told me I was temporary. That we were too different. You were right. Aurelia, please." He moved closer. "I made a mistake. I was young and stupid and following my father's orders, Anne. I love your father." The words hit him like a bullet. He actually stumbled backward, gripping the desk for support. "Not the way I thought I loved you," she continued, relentless in her honesty. "This is real. Built on respect and understanding and genuine partnership. Donovan sees me as an equal. He values my mind, my work, my opinions." She paused, letting the question form between them before she asked it. "Can you say you ever did?" The silence was damning. They both knew the answer. "I'm sorry." The words felt pathetic, inadequate. "For how I treated you. For what I said. For being too stupid to see. I forgive you." She said it simply, like it cost her nothing. Like he cost her nothing. "You were young and following your father's script. I don't blame you for that anymore. Then maybe we could. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back, Tate." Her voice was gentle but final. "It means I've moved on. To my father." He couldn't keep the bitterness out of his voice. "To a man who loves me. Who chose me. Not despite who I am, but because of it." She moved toward the door. "Can you understand the difference?" He understood. That was the problem. "Does he know?" Tate asked desperately. "About us?" She paused at the door, not looking back. "He knows I dated someone from the museum gala 3 years ago. He knows it ended badly. He doesn't need to know it was you. And neither does anyone else." What we had is dead, Tate. Let it stay buried. The door closed behind her, leaving him alone in his father's study, surrounded by priceless art and the ghost of what he'd destroyed. The wedding rehearsal was on a Friday evening. St. Patrick's Cathedral, massive and imposing, filled with 200 of their closest friends and family for the run-through. Tate stood at the altar beside his father, best man boutonniere already pinned to his lapel. The wedding planner directed people to their seats, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. Then the music started, and Aurelia appeared at the far end of the aisle. Even in simple rehearsal clothes, she took his breath away. She walked toward them with measured steps, practicing her timing, and Tate watched his father's face transform. Donovan Crowe, at 60, looked at his bride-to-be with pure, uncomplicated joy. No calculation. No strategy. Just love. Everything Tate had never given her. The rehearsal proceeded smoothly. Vows were practiced, timing was perfected, logistics were confirmed. Tate stood where he was told, moved when directed, and tried not to think about the fact that tomorrow, this would be real. The rehearsal dinner was held at the townhouse. Champagne flowed. Toasts were made. His father's business partners praised the match. Aurelia's brother, a professor at Columbia that Tate had never met because he'd never bothered to ask about her family, gave a speech about his sister deserving happiness. Everyone was so damn happy. You should eat something, a voice said beside him. Tate looked up to find Aurelia standing there, holding a plate. For a moment, she looked almost concerned. I'm fine. You look pale. She set the plate in front of him. And you've had 3 glasses of champagne on an empty stomach. Are you worried about me? The words came out more bitter than he intended. I'm worried you'll pass out during the ceremony tomorrow. Her voice was practical. It would be embarrassing for your father. Of course. For his father. Not for Tate. Not because she cared. I'll be fine, he repeated. She studied him for a moment, those amber eyes seeing too much. I hope so. For what it's worth, Tate, I do hope you find happiness. Real happiness. You deserve it. Do I? He met her gaze. After what I did to you. Everyone deserves happiness. Even people who make mistakes. She touched his arm briefly, the gesture sisterly. Familial. Not romantic. Just be happy for someone else, okay? Be happy for us. Then she was gone, returning to his father's side, and Tate was left with a plate of food he couldn't eat and words he couldn't unhear. Be happy for us. Like it was simple. Like he could just turn off 3 years of regret and watch the woman he'd loved marry his father with a smile on his face. The wedding day arrived with perfect June weather. Cloudless sky, gentle breeze, temperature in the mid-70s. Even nature was conspiring to make this day perfect. Tate arrived at the cathedral early, his best man duties requiring him to ensure everything was in place. The flowers were perfect. The musicians were ready. The priest was calm and prepared. Everything was perfect for his father to marry the woman Tate had thrown away. The guests began arriving. Manhattan's elite in their designer finest. Business titans and society matriarchs. Artists and academics from Aurelia's world, mixing with corporate sharks from Donovan's. 2 worlds merging, just like the couple. Tate stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, boutonniere perfect, smile fixed. His father stood beside him, unusually nervous for a man who commanded boardrooms without breaking a sweat. I'm glad you're here, Donovan said quietly. I know this is complicated. Tate looked at his father in surprise. Complicated was an understatement. She told me, Donovan continued, keeping his voice low. That she dated someone before me. Someone who hurt her badly. She didn't say who, but I'm not an idiot, Thaddeus. Tate's heart stopped. You know. I suspect. His father's eyes were sharp as ever. What I know for certain is that she loves me now. That she chose me. That she's building a future with me. The past doesn't matter. Doesn't it? Not if we don't let it. Donovan straightened his tie. So I'm asking you, as my son, to let the past stay in the past. Can you do that? What choice did he have? Yes, sir. Good. His father's voice softened. And Tate? I hope you find what we have someday. Real partnership. Real love. You deserve it too. Before Tate could respond, the music changed. The processional began. The guests rose, turning toward the back of the cathedral. And there she was. Aurelia walked down the aisle on her brother's arm, and she was devastating. Her dress was simple, elegant, perfect. A column of ivory silk that moved like water. No veil, just a delicate crown of white roses in her dark hair. She carried peonies, the same flowers that now appeared in the townhouse every week. She looked like a Renaissance painting come to life. Like every beautiful thing she'd ever restored. And her eyes were only for Donovan. She didn't glance at Tate. Didn't acknowledge his existence. She reached the altar, her brother placed her hand in Donovan's, and Tate watched his father's face transform with joy. Dearly beloved, the priest began. The ceremony blurred. Words about love and commitment and partnership. Vows exchanged with conviction. Rings slipped onto fingers with trembling hands. Tate stood 3 feet away and watched it all happen. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Tate's hands clenched at his sides. The silence stretched. He could speak. Could say something. Could blow up this whole perfect day. But what would he say? That he'd loved her first. That he'd thrown her away. That watching her marry his father was just as he'd earned. The moment passed. The ceremony continued. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Donovan Crow kissed Aurelia Hayes, now Aurelia Crow, and the cathedral erupted in applause. Tate clapped along with everyone else, the sound hollow in his ears. The reception was held at the townhouse. The same townhouse where Tate had grown up. Where he'd learned to walk and ride a bike and become the man his father wanted him to be. Now it was filled with flowers and champagne and celebration of his father's marriage to the woman Tate had used and discarded. The irony was suffocating. He stood at the edge of the ballroom, drinking too much and watching his father dance with his new wife. They moved together with surprising grace, Donovan whispering something that made Aurelia laugh. She looked happy. Actually, genuinely happy. She's too young for him, a familiar voice said. Tate turned to find his mother standing beside him, martini in hand. Margaret Crow, Donovan's first wife, had been invited out of courtesy and obligation. She'd come, Tate suspected, out of curiosity and spite. She loves him, Tate said, the words tasting like broken glass. Does she? His mother's eyes were calculating. Or does she love what he can give her? The money, the status, the lifestyle. You don't know her. Neither did you, apparently. Margaret's smile was sharp. Your father told me you dated her briefly. Before he met her. Cosmic joke, isn't it? Hilarious. Did she know who you were? His mother's voice dropped conspiratorially. When you were dating? Did she plan this? No. Tate said it with certainty. Whatever else Aurelia was, she wasn't a schemer. She genuinely moved on. If you say so. Margaret sipped her martini. Does Donovan know it was serious between you two? There's nothing to know. Tate kept his voice flat. I dated her for 3 months. I ended it. She moved on. End of story. Yet here you are, drinking yourself stupid at their wedding. Here I am, Tate agreed. His mother studied him with something that might have been pity. You're just like your father, you know. choosing work and status over real connection. He did it to me for 20 years. And now look, he found someone who makes him choose differently. She walked away, leaving Tate alone with his regrets and his whiskey. The first dance ended. His father pulled Aurelia close for a moment, kissed her forehead with such tenderness that Tate had to look away. He made it to the bathroom before he was sick. If you're watching this and your heart is breaking for Tate, let me stop you right there. Because here's the truth. He did this to himself. He used a woman who loved him, discarded her cruelly because his daddy told him to, and now he gets to watch her be happy with someone who actually deserves her. This isn't tragedy. This is consequences. This is karma. And we're just getting started. Comment below if you think Tate deserves any sympathy, because I'm not sure he does. Hit that subscribe button, because part 2 shows what happens when you destroy yourself over choices you can't undo. Share this with someone who needs to hear that using people has real consequences. Because what comes next will show you that some spirals end in rock bottom, and even that might not be enough. 2 years passed. Tate watched from the sidelines as Aurelia Crowe, she'd taken his father's name with obvious pride, became a fixture in Manhattan society. But not as a trophy wife. As a power in her own right. She opened a restoration consultancy that attracted clients from around the world. Museums sought her expertise. Private collectors paid premium rates for her services. She appeared on boards, published papers, gave lectures. The girl from Brooklyn who'd worn simple dresses and worked in a museum basement was gone. In her place was a woman who commanded rooms, who spoke with authority, who built an empire of her own while supporting her husband's. And Donovan looked at her like she'd hung the moon. Tate saw it at every family dinner, every business function, every unavoidable interaction. His father, who'd never shown his first wife any real affection, was devoted to his second. It was everything Tate had been too blind to build with her. And it was destroying him. The DUI happened on a Tuesday night. Tate had been at a club in Chelsea, drowning his regrets in vodka and the empty attention of models whose names he didn't remember. He'd driven home, or tried to, and wrapped his Maserati around a traffic light on Park Avenue. The lawyers made it disappear from the papers. The family name bought silence. But it didn't buy his father's forgiveness. "You're destroying yourself," Donovan said when Tate showed up to the office hungover 3 days later. "Over what? Jealousy? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence." His father's voice was cold. "You've been spiraling since the wedding. Missing meetings. Showing up drunk or not at all. This ends now. Or what? Or I cut you off completely." The threat hung between them. Tate had never worked for his money, never had to. The trust fund his grandfather had established paid for his lifestyle. But Donovan could freeze it with a phone call. "You wouldn't. Watch me." His father's eyes were hard. "Get help, Thaddeus. Real help. Or you're on your own." Tate left without responding. Went to a bar instead of rehab. Started a tab instead of getting sober. The cocaine started small. A line at a party. Something to keep him going through the endless nights he couldn't sleep. But it grew, as these things do, until he was doing it more often than not. His friends, if you could call them that, enablers really, kept him supplied. Kept him company. Kept him distracted from the fact that his life was imploding. He missed his father's 62nd birthday party. Couldn't face another celebration, another reminder of Aurelia's presence in the family. He missed Christmas dinner. Showed up to the townhouse drunk 3 days later, and Aurelia had opened the door. She'd taken one look at him, disheveled and reeking of whiskey, and something like pity had crossed her face. That was worse than indifference. Worse than anger. Pity. "You should go," she'd said gently. "Come back when you're sober, Tate." He'd left. Driven drunk again. Made it home this time, barely. The final crash, literal and metaphorical, came on a Friday night. Tate had shown up to a family dinner completely wasted. Could barely stand. Could barely string sentences together. His father had been there. Aurelia too. They'd watched him stumble through the door, and the disappointment on Donovan's face had been crushing. "You're destroying yourself," his father had said quietly. "Over what, Thaddeus? Jealousy? Rage? What could possibly be worth this?" Tate had tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Because what could he say? That watching them together was torture. That seeing her happy with his father made him hate himself. "You should go," Donovan had said, voice tired. "Sleep it off. We'll talk when you're sober." But Aurelia had been there, watching him with those amber eyes full of concern that he didn't deserve. And Tate couldn't take it. Couldn't stand her pity, her kindness, her ability to move on when he was drowning. He'd left. Got in his Bentley. Drove too fast through Manhattan streets blurred with rain and tears and vodka. The light pole appeared suddenly. Or he'd swerved into it. He'd never be quite sure which. The last thing he remembered before the airbag deployed was thinking that maybe this was easier. Maybe not waking up was better than facing another day of consequences. But he did wake up. In a hospital bed, head pounding, ribs screaming. His father sat in a chair beside the bed, and for the first time in Tate's life, Donovan Crowe looked old. "Rehab," his father said without preamble. 90 days, minimum. Or I cut you off completely. Your choice. She's not worth it." The words came out slurred, painful. "Whatever you think this is about. This has nothing to do with Aurelia." His father's voice cut like a knife. "This is about you being a spoiled child who's finally facing consequences. You threw away something good because I told you to. Now you're destroying yourself because she moved on. When the hell are you going to grow up?" The words hit harder than the crash had. "I've already arranged a place," Donovan continued. "Connecticut. Discreet. Effective. You leave tomorrow. And if I refuse? Then you're no son of mine." The ultimatum was clear. Get help or lose everything. For once in his life, Tate made the right choice. The Meadowbrook Recovery Center sat on 20 acres in rural Connecticut. Rolling hills. Peaceful gardens. The kind of place where rich people sent their problems to be fixed away from public scrutiny. Tate spent the first week in detox, physically purging the cocaine and alcohol from his system. The second week learning to sleep without substances. The third week actually participating in group therapy instead of sitting silent and resentful. By week 4, something shifted. It happened during a one-on-one session with his therapist, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who saw through his deflections and defenses like they were made of glass. "Tell me about Aurelia," she said one Thursday afternoon. Tate had been staring out the window at the gardens. "There's nothing to tell. You crashed your car drunk, nearly killed yourself, and when your father asked what this was about, you said her name." Dr. Okonkwo's voice was patient. "So let's try again. Tell me about Aurelia." And somehow, sitting in that quiet office with this stranger who had no stake in his family drama, Tate found himself telling the truth. All of it. The museum gala. 3 months of something real. His father's ultimatum. The cruel breakup. Her returning as his father's fiancée. The wedding. 2 years of watching her be happy with someone else. Someone better. "I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me," he finished, voice raw. "Because my father told me to. And now I get to watch her live the life I was too much of a coward to build with her." Dr. Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment. "Let me ask you something, Thaddeus. Is this about Aurelia? Or is this about you finally facing the fact that you've spent your entire life doing what your father tells you, then resenting the consequences?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He started, then stopped. Because she was right. This wasn't really about Aurelia. It was about the fact that at 30 years old, Tate had never made a real choice of his own. Never stood up to his father. Never chosen what he wanted over what was expected. He'd let Donovan dictate his career, his relationships, his entire life. And the one time something real had appeared, something that could have changed him, he'd chosen his father's approval over his own happiness. And he'd been blaming everyone else for it ever since. She moved on, Tate said quietly. Why can't I? Because moving on requires accepting responsibility for your choices. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. You're still treating yourself as a victim in this story, Thaddeus. But you're not. You're the villain. The moment you accept that is the moment you can start actually healing. The words should have made him angry. Instead, they felt relieved. For the first time since the wedding, since the breakup, since everything, Tate stopped making excuses. He was the villain in Aurelia's story. He'd used her, discarded her, then spiraled when she had the audacity to move on and be happy. And the only person responsible for that was him. 90 days became 120. Tate stayed past his required time, actually wanting to do the work instead of just going through the motions. He learned about patterns and triggers. About using substances to avoid feelings. About the difference between guilt and shame, between regret and growth. He missed his father's 62nd birthday. Missed Christmas. Missed New Year's. But he got sober. Actually, genuinely sober. And for the first time in 2 years, Tate could think about Aurelia without reaching for a bottle. It still hurt. But it was clean pain now. Honest pain. The kind that came from accepting consequences instead of drowning in them. In February, 4 months after the crash, Tate came home. The townhouse looked different somehow. Warmer. There were fresh flowers on the hall table, not just peonies now but a whole arrangement. Art that hadn't been there before hung in the hallway. Evidence of Aurelia's touch everywhere. She'd made this house a home in ways his mother never had. Welcome back, Master Thaddeus. Henderson took his coat, and if the butler was relieved to see him sober and healthy, he was too professional to show it. Your father is at the office. Miss Aurelia is in the library. Of course she was. Cataloging his father's collection. Making herself indispensable. Being everything Tate had been too blind to appreciate. He should have gone upstairs. Should have unpacked. Should have avoided her. Instead, he found himself walking toward the library. She was exactly where Henderson said she'd be, sitting at the desk with a laptop and several reference books spread around her. She wore reading glasses he'd never seen before, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked comfortable. At home. Because this was her home now. She looked up when he entered, and surprise crossed her face. Tate. Welcome home. Your father said you were doing well. 120 days. He stayed in the doorway, maintaining distance. I'm sober. Actually sober this time. That's wonderful. She smiled, and it looked genuine. I'm proud of you. You don't owe me that. Owe you what? Kindness. After everything I put you through. The crash, the spiral, all of it. You don't have to be kind to me. Aurelia closed her laptop, studying him with those amber eyes. I'm not being kind out of obligation, Tate. I'm being kind because I want you to be okay. Because despite everything, I don't hate you. Maybe you should. That wouldn't help either of us. She stood, moving around the desk but maintaining distance. You're my stepson now. We're family. I'd like us to find a way to coexist peacefully. Stepson. The word felt like swallowing glass. Is that what we are now? What else would we be? She met his gaze steadily. What we had is over, Tate. It's been over for 3 years. You need to let it go. I can't. The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest. I can't stop thinking about you. About us. About what we could have been if I hadn't been such a coward. Tate. I loved you. The confession burst out of him like a wound finally opened. 3 years ago, I loved you and I was too much of a coward to choose you over my father's approval. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry for what I said, how I ended it, all of it. Aurelia's expression softened, but not in the way he wanted. She looked at him with gentle sympathy, the kind you'd give a child who didn't understand. I know, she said quietly. And I loved you too. The man I thought you could be. Could be, not was. Past tense. But Tate, that man doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. You are who you choose to be, and you chose to be someone who uses people and discards them when they're inconvenient. I'm different now. The desperation in his voice was humiliating, but he couldn't stop. The rehab, the work I've done, I've changed. You're changing. For yourself. That's good. Important. She moved closer, and he realized she was going to touch him. Her hand landed on his arm, brief and sisterly. But it doesn't change us. There is no us. Because of my father. He couldn't keep the bitterness out. Because I'm happy. She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Because I found something real with a man who chose me every single day. Who didn't have to overcome his pride or his father's expectations to love me. Who just did. He's 40 years older than you. The words came out petulant, childish. And he sees me as an equal. Can you say the same? The question gutted him because they both knew the answer. No. He'd seen her as temporary. As fun. As different. Never as an equal. Never as a partner. I could, he tried weakly. If you gave me another chance. No. The word was gentle but final. Tate, I forgave you a long time ago. I don't carry anger toward you anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back. It means I've moved on. She stepped away, and the loss of even that brief touch felt like abandonment. I hope you find happiness. Her voice was sincere. Real happiness. Someone who's right for you. But it's not me. It can't be me. Because you're my stepmother. Because I'm in love with your father. She smiled, and it was radiant. Genuinely, completely in love with him. I'm sorry if that hurts you. But it's the truth. The truth settled between them like a tombstone. Final. Immovable. Real. Does he know? Tate asked, voice barely above a whisper. About us? About what we were. He knows I dated someone 3 years ago. Someone who hurt me badly. She held his gaze. He doesn't need to know it was you. And neither does anyone else. What we had is dead, Tate. Let it stay buried. For his sake or yours. For everyone's sake. She moved toward the door, clearly ending the conversation. I'm glad you're sober. I'm glad you're working on yourself. But I'm not your goal. I'm not your reward for getting better. I'm your father's wife, and I'm happy. Please respect that. She left him standing in the library, surrounded by his father's books and art and the ghost of what could have been. The days that followed established a new normal. Tate moved into a condo in Tribeca, creating distance from the townhouse and its reminders. He actually started working at Crow Industries, showing up sober and on time and contributing real value. His father noticed. Grudgingly at first, then with something like approval. The board meeting presentation was solid, Donovan said one evening over dinner at the townhouse. You're finally applying yourself. I'm trying. Tate pushed food around his plate. Aurelia was there too, of course. She was always there now, a permanent fixture at family dinners. It shows. His father sipped his wine. I'm giving you the Singapore project. If you can close the deal, there's a VP position waiting. It was more responsibility than Donovan had ever given him before. Real work. Real trust. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Earn it. After dinner, Tate helped clear the table, a domestic gesture that felt foreign. In the kitchen, he found himself alone with Aurelia for a moment. She was loading the dishwasher, efficient and comfortable in a kitchen that had once been his mother's domain. He's proud of you, she said without looking up. Your father. He won't say it directly, but he is. I have a lot to make up for. You're doing it. She straightened, met his eyes. One day at a time. Is that how you do it? He asked quietly. Move on one day at a time. Something like that. She smiled. Though it helps when you're moving toward something instead of just away from something. And you're moving toward him. It wasn't a question. Every day. Her voice was soft, certain. Every single day I choose this. Choose him. Choose us. The us that would never include Tate. Not the way he wanted. I'm happy for you, he said, and meant it. Or was starting to mean it. You deserve to be happy. So do you, Tate. She touched his arm again, that brief sisterly gesture that was all he'd ever get from her now. You'll find it. Just not with me. His father appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right here? Perfect. Aurelia moved to Donovan's side naturally, easily. Just telling Tate how proud you are about the Singapore project. If he delivers. But Donovan's smile was warmer than his words. You staying for coffee, or do you have plans? Plans, Tate lied. Early meeting tomorrow. He left them there, his father's arm around his wife's waist, and drove back to his empty condo alone. 6 months passed. Then a year. Then 2. Tate threw himself into work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including himself. The Singapore project succeeded. The VP position materialized. He traveled less, drank not at all, and slowly rebuilt his reputation. His father's disappointment shifted to something like respect. And Aurelia? She continued building her own empire. Her consultancy expanded into a full gallery space in Chelsea. She appeared in art journals and museum catalogs. She sat on boards and gave lectures. And every time Tate saw her at family dinners or business functions, she was happy. Genuinely, obviously happy with Donovan. His father, at 65, looked 10 years younger. Love, apparently, was good for him. The gallery opening happened on a Thursday evening in November. Tate had been invited, of course. Family obligation. He almost didn't go. But Miranda, the woman he'd been seeing for 3 months, wanted to. Miranda Chen was an attorney at a firm Crow Industries used. Smart, funny, with her own demons overcome. They'd met at an AA meeting, though she'd been there for a friend. She knew about Aurelia. Knew the basics, anyway. Tate had once dated his stepmother before she married his father. That it had ended badly. That he'd spent years getting over it. I'd like to see her work, Miranda had said. If you're okay with that. So Tate found himself walking into Aurelia's gallery in Chelsea, Miranda's hand in his, prepared to face his past one more time. The space was beautiful. Modern but warm, with perfect lighting that made each piece glow. Aurelia's eye for restoration extended to curation. Every painting, every sculpture, every installation was placed with purpose. The gallery was packed. Collectors and critics. Museum directors and art students. His father stood near the center, pride evident in every gesture as he watched his wife work the room. Aurelia looked radiant. She wore midnight blue, elegant and professional. Her hair was different, shorter, sophisticated. She moved among guests with easy confidence, discussing provenance and technique with authority. This was her world. The one she'd always belonged in. The one Tate had never bothered to truly see when they were together. She's really something, Miranda said quietly. She is. Tate kept his voice neutral. They moved through the gallery, examining the pieces. Everything was exquisite. Aurelia had collected works that told stories that held meaning beyond their monetary value. Near the back, Tate found a small Monet. Water lilies, of course. A different painting from the one where they'd first met, but close enough to make his breath catch. Only to people who look without seeing. He could almost hear her voice from that first night, when she'd been brave enough to dismiss him. When she'd seen through his charm to the shallow man beneath. Beautiful, isn't it? A woman appeared beside him. Gallery owner from Soho, someone his father did business with. Aurelia has exquisite taste. She does. Donovan's a lucky man. The woman sipped her champagne. Though between you and me, I think she's the lucky one. I've never seen him so devoted. Tate watched across the room as his father leaned down to whisper something to Aurelia. Watched her laugh, stand on her toes to kiss his cheek. Watched love, real and evident and lasting, between two people who'd found each other. Yes, he said quietly. She's very lucky. He and Miranda left before his father or Aurelia could see them. In the car, Miranda was quiet for a long moment. You're not over her, she finally said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. Tate considered lying. Considered his usual deflections. But Miranda deserved better. I'm not hung up on who she is now, he said carefully. I'm mourning who I could have been if I'd been brave enough to choose her when it mattered. Miranda studied him in the dim light of the car. That's probably the healthiest thing I've heard you say about this. It's the truth. He met her eyes. She's happy. My father's happy. And I'm working on it. Working on it is enough. Miranda squeezed his hand. For now. They drove through Manhattan in comfortable silence. When Tate dropped her off at her apartment, she kissed him gently. Call me when you're ready to actually try, she said. Not just work on it. Actually try. I'll be here. Then she was gone, and Tate was alone with his thoughts and the city lights. He drove. Not to his condo but to Brooklyn. To the neighborhood where Aurelia used to live. Her old building looked the same, but different people lived there now. Different lives being lived in that small space where he'd once felt something real. Tate parked outside a coffee shop, one they used to go to on Sunday mornings. It was late, nearly midnight, but it was open. He went in, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window. His phone was in his hand before he consciously decided to pick it up. He scrolled through his contacts to her name. Aurelia Crow. Not Hayes anymore. Never Hayes again. He stared at her name for a long time. Then he typed a message. I'm happy you're happy. I mean that. He hit send before he could second guess it. Her response came quickly. I know. Thank you. Then, after a pause, I hope you find your happiness too, Tate. You deserve it. He stared at those words. Forgiveness without reconciliation. Kindness without expectation. She'd moved on so completely that she could genuinely wish him well without any bitterness. That was the final knife. Not cruelty but care. The care of someone who'd loved him once but loved someone else now. Someone better. His father. Tate deleted her number. Not out of anger but acceptance. Because she was right. She was his stepmother. That's all she'd ever be. Some doors, once closed, stayed closed. Some choices, once made, couldn't be unmade. Some people moved on. Built new lives. Found new love. And some people sat in coffee shops in Brooklyn at midnight, finally understanding what they'd lost and accepting that it was gone forever. The Playboy billionaire who'd used and discarded Aurelia Hayes no longer existed. In his place was Thaddeus Crowe, sober and working and trying to be better. But better didn't change the past. And it didn't bring her back. She was gone. Completely, finally, irrevocably gone. And all Tate could do was live with it. 5 years later, Tate stood in a different gallery. Smaller, more intimate. A photography exhibition by an up-and-coming artist his company was sponsoring. Beside him stood his wife. Not Miranda, though they'd dated for another year before mutually agreeing they were better as friends. This was someone else. Someone he'd met in the most unlikely way possible. Rachel Morrison had rear-ended his car at a stoplight 2 years ago. She'd been a disaster, apologizing profusely, offering to pay for damages even though her ancient Honda clearly couldn't afford it. And something about her genuine distress, her honest embarrassment, had made Tate laugh for the first time in months. He'd taken her to coffee instead of exchanging insurance information. Coffee had become dinner. Dinner had become months of actually getting to know someone without games or pretense. Rachel was a high school art teacher. She had student loans and a rent-controlled apartment and absolutely no connection to his world of wealth and society. She was also kind and funny and saw him as just Tate, not the Crowe heir or the reformed playboy or the walking scandal. 6 months ago, he'd asked her to marry him in that same coffee shop where they'd had their first date. No ring yet, no plan, just a sudden certainty that he wanted to build a life with this woman. She'd said yes. The wedding had been small. City Hall, immediate family only. His father and Aurelia had come, of course. Donovan had shaken Tate's hand with genuine warmth. Aurelia had hugged Rachel and welcomed her to the family with what seemed like real happiness. It had been fine. Not perfect, but fine. And that was enough. Now, at this gallery, Rachel leaned against him comfortably. "These are incredible," she said, examining a black and white print of the Brooklyn Bridge at dawn. "They are." Tate's phone buzzed. Text from his father. "Family dinner Sunday. Your mother-in-law is visiting. Be there." His mother-in-law. Rachel's mother, who was visiting from Oregon and thoroughly overwhelmed by New York. The fact that his father included her in family dinner invitations was, Tate knew, Aurelia's influence. She had a way of making everyone feel included. Of building family instead of just occupying space in one. "We should go," Rachel said, checking her watch. "Early day tomorrow. Parent-teacher conferences." They left the gallery hand in hand. In the car, Rachel scrolled through her phone, then laughed. "What? Your stepmother posted photos from their anniversary trip. They look so happy." She showed him the image. His father and Aurelia on a beach somewhere tropical. Both smiling, relaxed. Donovan at 70, still vital. Aurelia at 46, still radiant. 15 years of marriage. They'd built something real. Something lasting. "They do look happy," Tate agreed. "Does it still hurt?" Rachel asked quietly. "Seeing them?" Tate considered the question honestly. "Sometimes. But not like it used to. Now it's just," he searched for words. "Wistful. Like looking at an alternate life I wasn't meant to have." "That's very philosophical of you, Mr. Crowe." "I have my moments." They drove to their apartment in Williamsburg. Not a penthouse, not a condo in Tribeca. Just a regular apartment in a regular building where Rachel had lived before they married and Tate had moved into because it felt like home in ways his expensive places never had. In bed that night, Rachel curled against him, already half asleep. Tate stared at the ceiling and thought about choices and consequences and the strange paths life took. He'd lost Aurelia. That was fact. Unchangeable and permanent. But he'd found Rachel. Not as a replacement, not as a consolation prize, but as her own person. Someone who fit his life as it was now, not as it had been. "Are you happy?" Rachel murmured, voice drowsy. Tate thought about happiness. Real happiness. The kind that came not from getting what you wanted but from deserving what you had. "I'm content," he said honestly. "That's enough." Rachel made a sleepy sound of agreement and drifted off. Tate lay awake a while longer, thinking about the playboy he'd been and the man he'd become. About Aurelia and his father and the family they'd built. About Rachel and the future they were building. About the fact that some broken things could be restored and some couldn't, and the trick was knowing the difference and having the grace to live with it. He fell asleep sometime after midnight, and for the first time in years, he didn't dream about amber eyes and what might have been. Sunday dinner at the townhouse was louder than usual with Rachel's mother there. Margaret Chen was a force of nature, completely unintimidated by wealth or status. She told embarrassing stories about Rachel's childhood and asked Donovan pointed questions about his politics. Aurelia clearly delighted in her. They talked about art and teaching, finding common ground despite their different worlds. Watching them, Tate felt something settle in his chest. This was family. Messy and complicated and built from unexpected pieces, but family nonetheless. After dinner, he found himself alone with Aurelia for a moment on the terrace. She'd stepped out for air, and he'd followed without thinking. "Rachel is wonderful," she said, not looking at him. "I'm happy for you, Tate." "Thank you." He meant it. "I'm happy for you too. You and Dad. 15 years it's impressive." She smiled. "We have our moments. But yes, I'm very happy." The silence between them was comfortable now. Not charged, not painful. Just two people who'd once meant something to each other and now meant something different. "I'm glad you found what you were looking for," Tate said quietly. "So am I." She finally looked at him. "And I'm glad you found Rachel. She's good for you." "She is. You're different now." Aurelia's voice was thoughtful. Quieter. More settled. Older. Tate smiled wryly. "Hopefully wiser." "Definitely wiser." She touched his arm, that brief familiar gesture that no longer hurt. "You did the work, Tate. You got sober, faced your demons, built a real life. That takes courage. So does forgiving someone who hurt you. I told you a long time ago, I don't carry anger." She pulled her wrap tighter against the autumn breeze. "Life's too short for that." Through the glass doors, they could see their spouses. Donovan was showing Margaret something on his phone, probably photos from their anniversary trip. Rachel was laughing at something someone said. Two different worlds. Two different lives. Both real, both valid, both built from the wreckage of what came before. "We should go in," Aurelia said. "Before they send a search party." They walked back inside together, and if anyone noticed them returning from the terrace, no one commented. Because it wasn't scandalous or dramatic. Just a stepmother and stepson, having a conversation at a family dinner. Which was all they were now. All they'd ever be. And finally, after years of fighting it, Tate was okay with that. "If you've stayed with me this whole journey, you know this isn't a story about getting what you want. It's a story about living with what you've earned." Tate Crow used a woman who loved him. Discarded her cruelly. Then watched her build a beautiful life with someone who actually deserved her. His own father. That's not tragedy. That's consequences. That's karma. And the only redemption available was accepting it and building something new from the ashes. Because here's the truth, some things can be restored. Broken people can heal. Shattered relationships can be rebuilt, just not always with the same people. And some doors, once closed, stay closed forever. The wisdom is knowing which is which and having the grace to live with it. So what can we learn from Tate and Aurelia's story? First, using people has real consequences. Tate treated Aurelia as temporary, as fun, as less than. He discarded her when she became inconvenient. And the universe made him watch her thrive without him. That's not coincidence. That's cause and effect. Second, choosing other people's expectations over your own heart will destroy you. Tate let his father dictate his choices, then blamed everyone else when those choices cost him. He spent years in that pattern before finally accepting responsibility. Third, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Aurelia forgave Tate. Genuinely, completely. But she didn't take him back. She moved on. She built a life with someone better. Forgiveness freed her, but it didn't obligate her to give him another chance. Fourth, real love chooses you. Donovan chose Aurelia every single day. Publicly, proudly, completely. He valued her mind, her work, her opinions. He saw her as an equal and partner. Tate had offered none of that, and he lost her because of it. Fifth, rock bottom is a gift if you use it. Tate's crash, literal and metaphorical, forced him to face his demons. Rehab wasn't punishment. It was opportunity. He could have wasted it. Instead, he did the work and became someone better. Sixth, better doesn't erase the past. Tate got sober, worked hard, became a decent person. But that didn't change what he'd done to Aurelia. Didn't earn him a second chance with her. Growth is its own reward, not a transaction. Seventh, moving on is possible. For everyone. Aurelia moved on to Donovan. Tate eventually moved on to Rachel. Different paths, different outcomes, both valid. You don't have to get what you wanted to build a good life. 8. Some consequences last forever. Tate will always be the man who used and discarded Aurelia. She'll always be his stepmother. That's permanent. But permanent doesn't mean unbearable. It just means accepting reality instead of fighting it. 9th, contentment is underrated. Tate didn't get his fairy tale ending. He got something quieter. A good woman, a decent life, family dinners and normal happiness. And he learned that was enough. Because happiness isn't getting everything you want. It's deserving what you have. And finally, grace and acceptance is its own form of redemption. Tate couldn't fix what he broke. Couldn't undo his choices. But he could accept them, learn from them, and build something new. That's not the dramatic redemption arc stories promise. It's the real one. The one that actually matters. Drop a comment telling me, did Tate deserve a second chance with Aurelia, or did he get exactly what he earned? I'm genuinely curious what you think. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something, even if it was uncomfortable. Subscribe to Mr. Steven's Stories for more tales about real consequences and messy redemption. Share this with someone who needs to hear that some mistakes can't be fixed, only learned from. And ring that bell, because the stories we tell ourselves about love and loss and moving on, those are the stories that shape our lives. Remember, choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose what you can live with. Because some doors close forever, and all you can do is find new ones to walk through. Some loves are meant to teach you, not last forever. Some people move on, and the healthiest thing you can do is let them. Tate Crow learned these lessons the hard way. He lost the woman he loved to his own father. He spiraled into addiction and nearly died. He had to rebuild himself from nothing. But he did rebuild. He got sober. He found Rachel. He made peace with his stepmother and his past. He learned that you don't have to get everything you want to have a life worth living. That's not the ending movies promise. But it's the ending real life offers. And sometimes, that's enough. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Thank you for facing these uncomfortable truths about choices and consequences and the price we pay for using people we claim to care about. Now go live your life. Make choices you can live with. Treat people like they matter. Build things that last. And if you've already made mistakes, do the work to become better. Not to earn back what you lost, but to deserve what comes next. This is Mr. Steven Stories, reminding you that the best stories don't always have happy endings. Sometimes they just have honest ones. And that's more valuable than you know.